Week 4 was Identity Weekend around the Fredericksburg area for high school football. We will recap what we have learned right here on the Varsity 360 Gridiron Reports. Hi there, everyone. Mark Coleman here from the Virginia Varsity Sports Network. Welcome to this week's episode of the Varsity 360 Gridiron Report. Very happy to be joined by a couple of my good friends from the FLS Varsity team. We have intrepid reporter Mr. Nathan Warters. Nathan, welcome back. You trip to Indiana, man, huh?
Yeah, a lot of fun. Purdue.
A successful one, yeah.
Yeah.
Good times, good times. Wish we could talk Virginia Tech, but it's high school this time.
They don't care about Virginia Tech.
And we also have Assistant Sports Editor for the Freelance Star, Mr. Justin Rice.
Right now.
Welcome, man. How you been?
Good, getting along.
Good. Well, we had an exciting week. I'm calling it the Identity Weekend. I think we've learned some things about a couple of schools, a couple of teams from around the area. Let's jump in and see what we think that maybe we've learned from this past week's results. Little doubt that the game of the week from Week 4 was a Stafford County matchup between Mountain View and Colonial Forge, a couple of undefeated teams. Justin, this game did not disappoint.
I feel like last week's show I talked about Mountain View and they hadn't played a really tough schedule, and I thought they still had something to prove. I'm convinced. I'm a little surprised Mountain View won. I think I'd have picked Forge. I'm a lot surprised with the fashion that Mountain View won. Points early, all kinds of offense. I mean, these guys look good offensively.
Yeah, and I was talking to Bill Brown last week before this game, Colonial Forge's head coach, and he's like, these triplets, Tweedy, Collison Coffee, Trey Coghill, they're really good. And then the skill they have at other positions too is really good as well. But those three remind me a lot of the guys they had a few years back when they had Elijah Burris, Gordon Collins, they had Deshaun Hamilton. I think these guys are all legit, and I think this was a game where they really kind of came out and showed, okay, maybe people have been sleeping on them a little bit.
Early front runner for a team we undersold in our high school football preview, Mountain View Wildcats.
No doubt.
Yeah.
They proved a lot. I think that we learned something about the Mountain View identity. They came out, unveiled their new turf field there, and they were pretty fast out on that turf. I mean, it's maybe for the area the greatest show on turf right now, and they put up some really good numbers. Trey Coghill, 6 receptions, 126 yards, and a touchdown receiving. Jameel Collison Coffee just goes off again, 19 carries, 190 yards, 2 touchdowns rushing. He also has 96 yards receiving and another touchdown through the air. And that was led by the quarterback Ahmad Tweedy, 14 carries for 158 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 15 for 27 throwing the ball, 264 yards, 2 more touchdowns passing. The Freelance Star Player of the Week.
612 offensive yards as a team. Colonial Forge defense, not happy about this one.
No, not at all. They were coming off a shutout too against Stafford, and I know they've kind of dealt with some injuries. They got some young guys at some real key spots. It's probably a learning experience for them. They've got some good tape to study and learn from. You talk about identity, though, for Mountain View. Their identity is they do everything well on offense, especially with Tweedy leading the way. Yeah. These guys are going to be really hard to stop. You can key on one element, and they're just going to be able to do the other one really well.
We talk about identity with Forge. This one doesn't sour me on Forge. I think they're still very good. I think what we just learned, though, is Mountain View is a pretty good football team this year. Colonial Forge has played that tough part of the Stafford schedule. Stafford schools between Brook Point and Mountain View and North Stafford and Colonial Forge, I think it's 4 quality football teams.
It bodes well for some matchups coming up later on down the schedule here. I'm really anxious to see how Mountain View and Massaponax, how that's going to be an exciting.
Looking pretty big game, yeah.
I do mention Antonio McCrae from Colonial Forge, 23 carries, 108 yards, and a touchdown rushing. In the loss, Mountain View with the big victory over Colonial Forge, final 42-27. Number 1 team in the area, Massaponax, took on Freedom in a game that really wasn't all that close. 17 different ball carriers for Ponax, 460 yards rushing. They cruised to a 48-20 victory over Freedom. Joey Benden, my goodness.
Yeah, he scored the first 3 touchdowns of the game. They were up 21-0 before Freedom could even kind of open their eyes and figure out what was going on. he's so good. I mean, I've covered a couple games so far with him leading the way, and Eric Ludden, their coach, talks about his poise, how much in control he is. He's not a real talkative guy, but he really has control of that huddle, and they're so good. They have so many guys to contribute to that offense, and they've kind of figured out some new roles for guys, the fullback roles and all that kind of stuff. And just looks like their offense is running on all cylinders.
I love my favorite Massaponics anecdote of the week is, of course, I was at the Conference 4 golf tournament this week and ran into Nat Jackson, who is at Riverbend now as a coach, of course, but was a standout doing exactly what Joey Benden is doing. Nat Jackson confirms Joey Benden much better than Nat Jackson was in high school. From Nat Jackson's mouth, yeah.
That says a lot.
Joey is sneaky fast, and I think that's the thing that really surprises people when they see him, and probably opponents when they see him in person versus on film. He hits a hole faster than just about anyone I've seen.
And Ponix is rolling their offense. Of course, they've been putting up the rushing yards the last couple weeks. Since maybe that Cortland game, they bail out there, and then it's been a roll since then. And now they get a bye week, a little time off to figure out the things they're not quite doing quite as well, get those straightened out, and then they got Stonewall Jackson, a team you like Massaponics against coming out of the bye.
I think they've hit 40 in all their last 3 games too, so they've had a chance to. Yeah. I think they've had a chance to get a lot. I mean, they had 17 different ball carriers. It wasn't because they wanted to get all those guys involved immediately. It was because they were up big and they were able to kind of let these guys, get some playing time there. That's important because they're unveiling some new pieces here. They had to replace some pretty key running backs there from that offense last year.
No doubt.
So they're getting a chance to get all these guys playing time, which is really good for them. Trey
Carson with 2 rushing touchdowns in this game. But yeah, that's a good point. And I think it's 27 consecutive regular season victories for this Ponix team. But if we're talking about identity, I think we know that this team measures its success by the postseason performance. So they are quite capable at running off a large number of wins during the regular season, but what they do in the postseason is going to determine how they feel about it.
Well, that's true, but you talk about identity, and the school, it's most easy to predict exactly what they'll be that year. Every year is Massaponics. By this time, they're going to run the option. They're going to be piling up 300 and 400 rushing yards a game. They're going to be scoring a bunch of points, and apparently they're going to win regular season games. And then, yeah, we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Ponix with the 48-20 victory over Freedom. Perhaps no better game to exemplify identity weekend than a matchup between an 0-3 Riverbend Bears and a 3-0 Battlefield Bobcats team. Riverbend down 8 starters due to injury. Somehow they come away with a 13-10 victory. I think that this is probably a season-turning game for the Bears.
Season saver, if we're going to be hyperbolic about it, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Coach DeMarco, Tony DeMarco, very proud and pleased with the way that his team responded. This was a team that was on the edge. They had played some close games, but they were also facing a lot of injuries and a tough team coming in, and they pulled away with a impressive victory.
What did you think that Riverbend did especially? How are they addressing some of these injuries, and where are they filling in, and who's doing that? And
Tywan Garbutt obviously is a key to this. He's catching the ball, running the ball, he's playing wide receiver, tight end, running back, moving him around the field. He draws a lot of attention from the defense. That opened up some passing lanes. Jordan DeMarco was 16 for 21 in this game, only 133 yards, but enough to continue to move the chains. He did have 2 touchdown passes. Both went to the number 2 tight end, Matt Young. One of them he was wide open on. The other he was crunched in the end zone.
Yeah, Young with 4 catches out of those 16 for 38 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, it's a good day for him.
So spreading the ball around and playing very stout run defense. Battlefield wanted to run the ball. Chris Farrell, 225 yards or so the previous week, only 56 or so this week against the Bears.
You say season saver for Riverbend. They've been so close all year. They were close against Chancellor. They were close against Cortland. They won a close game against these guys. Massaponics was really the only game they got beat fairly handily, and afterwards talking to Coach DeMarco, he was so frustrated by the influx of injuries, and it just seemed like they just kept coming and coming and coming. I think this is just a really good table turner for them. I think they'll be able to to respond after this. A big win. Battlefield beat Hilton handily earlier this year, so this is a big win for Rivermen.
You know, the Bears, of course, have Colonial Forge this Friday. Going to be an important game for them. But after that, I think the schedule, they're going to turn sort of to the Prince William portion of their schedule. I think it gets a little more favorable. The Stafford schools have shown us that they're not to be trifled with. And, of course, Massaponax, Chancellor, Cortland, Rivermen's played a really tough schedule to begin the season, and I think it's easier, a little bit ahead, going to have a chance to maybe turn things around and get in the win column, get in the 500 column, then maybe climb into the playoff race.
Look at that, Justin Rice not showing much love to the Northern Virginia schools. We'll see how that turns out.
We'll certainly see. Yeah.
As it stands, though, Riverbend with a 13-10 victory over Battlefield. Longtime rivals Orange and Spotsylvania tangled this past week. And Orange coming away with a big 33-3 victory. Nathan, I know you're pretty high on this Orange team.
You know, I think the Hornets and their fans have reason to be, really excited right now. They're 2-1 for the first time since 2008. I think that matches their highest win total. 2 wins matches their highest win total the last 4 years. Jesse Lohr, former player there at Orange, has got these guys playing really well right now. This is big for them, 2-1. I mean, they have reason to be excited.
And D'Angelo Hunt, I think, is a big reason for the reason to be excited. He had another big game against Spotsy, 11 carries for 132 yards, scored a pair of touchdowns. He's off to a nice start this season. Then Trevon Smith, his backfield mate there, 13 carries, 83 yards, also gets a touchdown. The Hornets, you can sit here and accumulate PowerPoints, you get some wins and sort of accumulate those things. And, they're about to plow into the Jefferson District portion of their schedule. It's hit or miss. There's some very good teams. There's some teams that you like Orange against. The Thursday game this week against Powhatan, that's a good tester, good measuring stick game for Orange.
So when we talk about identity, these are 2 teams that are still young and trying to establish themselves to former glory, I suppose. Orange gets the victory here and looks like they're on maybe a step or 2 ahead, but Spotsy kind of has some impressive potential there as well. Some younger kids, and I feel like it's good to see these 2 programs that feel like they are finally on the upswing after a couple of years of being on the downturn.
I'm certain the Knights want some wins, and they're gonna still have a chance this season to win some games. They're still really young.
Yeah,
really, really young.
Yeah. Orange with the 33-3 victory over Spotsy. Let's take a look now at Chancellor and Liberty, and perhaps another example of an identity weekend. Liberty actually scheduled Chancellor as the homecoming opponent. We're in mid-September, for crying out loud. Coach Oliver and the Chargers apparently didn't take too lightly to that. They disappoint the Liberty fans and faithful. Chancellor with a 26-14 victory.
I'm sure Chancellor is happy to take that little tidbit and post it up on the board and say, homecoming, we're going to use that for inspiration. But really, when you talk about Chancellor, it's like when we talk about Mountain View and we talk about the trio they've got going on. We talk about Chancellor, sort of the same thing right now. Jason Brown with another solid game at quarterback for the Chargers, 12 of 15 for 205 yards, 2 touchdowns. Chris Greene, 5 catches for 96 with 2 touchdowns receiving and 2 interceptions. Mario Wisdom, 15 carries, 141 yards, scores a touchdown. Chargers got it going on offense, right?
And Greene's a guy that, it's been E.J. Jenkins pretty much the whole season.
Right.
He had that huge game last week. Chris Greene comes in, has a big game now. They're diversifying. They've got a lot of different playmakers. This offense is kind of blossoming before our eyes, and they've really been playing well all year. They've had one bad loss to Massaponax, but that seems to be a common thread for a lot of teams. Massaponax is a team that's hard to beat, but Chancellor's, they're rolling right now.
And given their schedule, we've talked about this a million times on the show. Chancellor's 3-1. I think that's a fabulous start for the Chargers to be 3-1 at this point with the schedule they've played. You still look up at the head. Cortland's still to come. James River of Chesterfield still to come. James Monroe's still to come. They still got a couple tough games left. Some games that you really like them in. I think the Chargers to be 3-1 at this point, they got to be ecstatic.
I think so, and they should be. And a bye next week. So Chancellor with the 26-14 victory over Liberty. Louisa took on King George out in King George County. Justin, I know you were at this game. Why was the headline not Louisa gets the job done?
Because we pay our headline writers more than we pay you, I think is the answer. But we've been talking about teams and finding their identity. I think Louisa has certainly over the last 2 weeks found their identity. His name is Joe Whalen. He's playing sort of this tailback thing and this pistol single wing thing they've got going on. and he's had 82 carries over the last 2 games, and this week, of course, 42 carries for 238 yards rushing, scored a pair of touchdowns. They handed it to him, they handed it to him, they handed it to him again, then they handed it to him, and then they handed it to him again. He got the job done.
Does he play defense as well?
Yeah, I look for him over there. He's a heck of an athlete. You figure they probably, in a key spot, would find a spot for him, yeah.
Okay. Jordan Cherry with 6 carries and a touchdown rushing, also a touchdown passing for Louisa. Marquis Lee had 5 receptions and that touchdown catch.
And Lee is worth note. You know, he's a big, tall kid, good-looking receiver. Caught a couple really nice key passes for Louisa to keep drives moving or sort of spark drives. You know, he's big and tall, and Louisa gets this little bootleg thing working with him running in and out, and it's an easy pitch and catch for Cherry. I think they've really simplified. They're going to hand it to Whalen a lot, and they're going to just do the easy things and make plays easy for Jordan Cherry. And if they can avoid mistakes, Louisa is a team that's going to turn it around. They're not a 1-2 team. They're much better than that.
Well, they are a 1-2 team, but they're better than their record indicates, is what you're trying to say there. They'll get a chance to demonstrate that against Albemarle coming up on Thursday. That might be a challenging test for them.
It's a good tester.
It'll be a good test. Meanwhile, how do you feel about King George? I mean, they fall to 1-3 now. They're going to go down to the Portsmouth area this coming week. Foxes may be struggling.
King George 1-3, but I think the 1-3, you know, we talk about like Riverbend being 1-3 and so on. You know, King George has run into Liberty, who I think is a quality opponent. You know, they ran into Essex. That's maybe one of the best Essex teams I think I've seen. Essex looked really good against King George this year. And of course, Louisa, you know, had the thing with Whalen. You know, King George is like Louisa. They're going to try to simplify. They're going to, if they don't make a lot of mistakes, turn the ball over. They've got winnable games on their schedule. I see Norcom. That's going to be a tough trip.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay. Well, Louisa with the 36-26 victory over King George. Taking a look now at other games around the area, we will start with JM, who made a difficult trip down south again, took on a good Petersburg team, came away with a big victory.
And back-to-back weeks where they've had 70 points last week, they had 50 plus this week. They're spreading the ball around. They have a lot of guys that are getting carries and playing really well. It looks like this JM team has got a lot of diversity offensively, and they're doing really well.
Yeah, they figured out how to score, no doubt.
Well, certainly, and this was a team I think that was a big. They had some offensive question marks, of course, with Jay gone. Gosh, they're scoring points. They're looking good. They're getting this sort of weird part of their schedule out of the way, where you know Petersburg and Dinwiddie and Manassas Park. JM looks like they're in really good shape. Got some testers coming up. Chancellor and Cortland down the road. Essex down the road.
Yeah, it doesn't. The travel, I guess, gets easier, but the schedule, the opponent may not get a whole lot simpler there. But a big victory for JM. Caroline, meanwhile, still in search of their first victory. They took on and gave Thomas Jefferson a good test. They fall just short, 43-41. Suddenly, Caroline's got a running attack, though.
Yeah, it was a really tough loss for them, too. They came back, stormed back there at the end, lost in overtime, missed that 2-point conversion. But for the first time in quite some time, they had a 100-yard rusher this time. They didn't have one at all last year. Antonio Robinson, 30 carries for 186 yards and 4 touchdowns. It looks like the offense is starting to kind of take shape there in Caroline. This could be the start of something for those guys.
They didn't have a 100-yard rusher in total for the entire season last year.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Robinson has a good game. You know, Caroline's shown a spark and so on. You know, I think positive steps.
Yeah, absolutely. Cortland, meanwhile, continues to roll, and with a 43-0 victory over Fauquier.
Of course, they do what they do. You know, you had Greene with 105 yards, and Cheatham with 64 yards, and Nick Grant with 58 yards, and Cortland cruises.
Yeah, and the defense is stout there as well. Colonial Beach falls to Sussex Central, 18-6. Sad to see the Beach struggling a little bit. That's a bit surprising.
A little bit, and I liked the Beach this year. I feel like their depth right now is maybe an issue.
Yeah. Eastern View falls to a very strong Sharando team, 42-21. Josh Stallings does what he does through, they played 3 or 4 games. I think they've only played 3 games so far. He scored, I believe, 11 touchdowns. Remember, he had the 2 blocked punt returns for TDs. Those include passing touchdowns, by the way. Josh Stallings, certainly a big bright spot for Eastern View. They fall, however, to Sharando, 42-21. Culpeper with a 33-6 victory over Fluvanna. Hunter Krim with some impressive stats there. 4 touchdown passes, 3 of them go to Eli Marks. course, I think all Culpeper does is throw the ball around, right? So there's going to be some lots of opportunities to stuff the stats there.
They like to throw, and good PowerPoints win for Culpeper. Good playoff making win for Culpeper.
No doubt. And WNL comes through with a 20-2 victory over Rappahannock. So, so that's a look at Week 4 from around the area. Week 5 offers some interesting matchups around the Fredericksburg area for high school football. Nathan, which of these very intriguing games is most interesting to you?
North Stafford at Battlefield, a couple teams coming off losses. North Stafford's had a bye week. Let's see how they come back. Are they the team that we thought they were a couple weeks ago? Are they the team that lost that shootout to Colonial Forge? I think they're a lot better than that, and I think they're going to go up there and show out against Battlefield.
That Brook Point Osborne looks like an interesting matchup too, though.
Speaking of North Stafford, they went to Osborne in the opening week and ran all over them. And I'm thinking about Damone Drew from Brook Point, who's our area leading rusher. I think he's going to have a heyday against Osborne.
He's already had a 350-yard game this season.
It's going to be a fun game to watch, I think, for Brook Point fans.
No doubt. Justin, which of these games is most interesting to you?
Well, I think, maybe from the far reaches, of course, WNL King William. That's always an interesting game. King Williams is a school that consistently fields pretty nice teams. WNL moving up to 2A this year. They're 2-1. They've got it going since their opener loss to King George. Let's see now what the Eagles are exactly. I think this is a great tester. Maybe a little closer to home, of course. Osborne Park and Stafford, I think, is a great one to look for. Someone's going to win. Someone's going to win. Osborne Park, I think, has been less competitive than Stafford. Certainly Stafford with the close loss to open the season to Patriot. I think maybe Stafford's got a chance to, get behind Zevon Holly. You hope you got Josh Ball back healthy and maybe run their way to a first victory.
Yeah. Some good games there, fellas. I'm sort of partial to that Colonial Forge Riverbend game, though. I think that's probably going to be the game of the week from around the area. A classic matchup. Colonial Forge undefeated in this rivalry. So it's hard to say it's a rivalry if one team is consistently winning. Forge 3-1 on the year, Riverbend 1-3. It's at Bend. Did they do enough with the victory last week against Battlefield? I'm curious to see how this game's going to shake out. Forge coming off I know that they're disappointed by the loss at Mountain View. It should be interesting to see how these two teams respond.
How healthy are the Bears? I know Orlando Jones got some carries late in that game last week. I mean, he's big for them. They need to get somebody to carry the ball. So it'll be interesting to see who's healthy for Riverbend this week.
Well, and I think one of the funny things about how things work out, of course, before last week's game for Forge, the Freelance Star, we had a nice piece on Forge's defense. It didn't go so well against Mountain View. I think Forge's defense probably looking to send a message. Now, they've given up points. They gave up points to Brook Point. They gave up points to North Stafford. They certainly gave up points to Mountain View. Forge defense, I think, maybe looking for a turnaround game.
Are you saying that there may be a Freelance Star feature jinx streak going on here? Hey, here's a breaking piece of news, by the way. Last week, a streak ended. Nakeem Morton did not return a kick for a touchdown last week. North Stafford, of course, was on a bye.
Yeah, he may have played Madden or something. You don't know.
I'm sure he's run, probably in practice, he ran back a few. So
Perhaps. Plenty of other great games on the slate around the area. I hope that you're able to go out and see one of these exciting Fredericksburg area high school football games. Well, that is going to do it for this week's installment of the award-winning Varsity 360 Gridiron Report, and it is always a blast to be able to do this with some of my good friends from the FLS Varsity team, Nathan Warters, Justin Rice, fellas. It wouldn't be much of a show without you. I appreciate the time.
You really lean on that award-winning. It's like a crutch.
I have to remind the folks that, and maybe more will come. You say it with conviction and...
I like that. I like where you're going.
A little behind the scenes.
Winners want to win.
That's right. It was Identity Weekend, and we have asserted our identity as well. How about that?
Absolutely.
With authority.
Good
Tech with a big win, too. Like to see that. They're going to pull away with a victory against Eastern Carolina?
I don't know. Purdue's terrible. It was a fun road trip, though. But
yeah, good deal. For the good folks from the Freelance Star and the Virginia Varsity Sports Network, my name is Mark Coleman. Thanks for watching, everyone.